You're listening to the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
Holiness, therefore, both makes the Lord what he is, he's God, and what he distinctively is, the God of utter moral perfection. In both these ways, and in every way, it's his inmost, utmost, uppermost being. That's who he is. He's holy. He's uniquely distinct from us in what marks him out from anybody else who claims to be God. He's holy. So he swears by his holiness.
There is something truly amazing about the God we serve. Unlike other religions that adhere to a mindset or the teachings of someone who remains dead, we follow Jesus Christ, the Word of God made flesh. He died for our sins on the cross and rose again 3 days later. So if you've been hesitant to learn more about Jesus, Pastor Ken invites you to reach out to Jesus. Ask God to make himself known in your life, and without a doubt, he will reveal himself to you. So, what are you waiting for? Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Amos, chapter 4, as he continues his message, What the Prophet Meant to Say Was.
Now, Mount Hermon, as we discussed in our study of chapter 3, is where the fallen divine beings came to earth per the book of Enoch and began the corruption of mankind by cohabiting with women that they took. Now, Enoch also explains the demons are the spirits of the Nephilim killed in the flood. And they're all in that area too. It was the area of the first incursion. In the book of Enoch, Enoch is asked by the imprisoned watchers to appeal on their behalf to the Lord. So this is after all of this has happened. And Enoch, of course, was taken to be with the Lord. So if you're reading, and Enoch's not a canonical book, okay? So this is good reference material. But it says in Enoch 15, and remember, he's taking a message from these watchers who have now been cast into Tartarus, and he's bringing a message to the Lord on their behalf. And answering, he said to me, the true human, a human of the truth, the scribe. Then I heard his voice saying, don't be afraid, Enoch, a true human and scribe of the truth. Come here and hear my voice. So that's the Lord talking to him. Notice the term true human. That was a problem on planet Earth during that time. It was one of the reasons why there was a flood. So he says, go to those and say to those who sent you, these are the fallen angels, it was necessary for you to ask about the humans and not the humans about you. On what account did you abandon the high, holy heavens of eternity and sleep with the women and be defiled with the daughters of humans and take women for yourselves? You acted just like the sons of earth, and you fathered children for yourselves, giant sons, and you were holy, living, eternal spirits. And Jesus kind of refers to that when he talks about they don't marry like the angels in heaven. So he's kind of referring to this same section, because what he's going to say, this is why angels don't have wives. They're, as he says, holy, living, eternal spirits. Going on, he says, you were defiled with the blood of the women, and with the blood of the flesh you brought forth children, and you desired the blood of humans, just like those of flesh and blood do, those who die and destroyed. Because of this I gave women to them in order to be impregnated and procreate children by them this way, so that not every work comes to an end for them upon the earth. You were living eternal spirits and not dying into all the generations of eternity. And because this, I did not make wives available for you, but the spirits of heaven, and their dwelling is in heaven. Now the giants who were born from the spirits, even the strong spirits of flesh upon the earth, their dwelling will be on the earth. Evil spirits went out from their body, for they came from the higher places, and the beginning of their creation and foundation is from the watchful holy ones. They will be called evil spirits. Over the spirits of heaven, their dwelling will be in heaven, the spirits that are born upon the earth, on the earth. Bashan, what Amos is referring to, is demon central. And the ruling elite know that, and when he calls these women the cows of Bashan, he is saying several things at one time. Now, the angels had intercourse with women. They violated their order. and begat demons, and then they further revealed magic to humans and became a matter of all kinds of sin. And we see that in Enoch 8, where we read one of them named Aziel taught the humans to make swords, weapons, shields, breastplates, the lessons of the angels, and then they showed them mining, craftsmanship, anklets, adornment, powders, and painted eyes. Don't know what that's all about, but that was one of the things they said. And all kinds of choice stones and dyeing, much ungodliness and prostitution happened, and they were led astray and ruined in all their ways. Simoniza taught enchantments and the cutting of roots, Amaris, spells of healing, Rachael, astrology, Crochiel, the science of symptoms, Sathiel, watching the stars, Siriel, the course of the moon. Therefore, the cry of the utterly destroyed people went up into heaven. So they were involved with most of the corruption of mankind is what that's all about. Now, on top of this, you have Amos now showing up. Again, Amos 4:1. Hear this word, you cows of Bashan who are in the mountains of Samaria. So he's talking to the women. He's talking to the fallen angels. He's talking to the demons. He's got everybody who he's talking to about this. I mean, it's not just one group. He's talking to a large group who exploit the poor, who oppress the needy and say to their husbands, bring now that we may drink. Now, is he derogatorily targeting upper-class women, the wives of the ruling elites, the ones who are busy worshiping demons and fallen angels at Bethel and Dan? Yes, he is, okay? He's probably smiling while he's saying this. He may even be pointing at them. I don't know. This is fertility worship. This is not Yahweh worship. They could also possibly be female priestesses inside this place, or some of the prostitutes who are working there at both locations. He may be targeting temple priestesses who served the gods along with the priests. We don't know. It's possible that he also may be talking about the fallen angels and the demons that are actually behind all of this. The possibility is strengthened when you start looking at the crimes that are mentioned. Dr. Heiser points this out. Oppressing the poor, Dalam, oppressing the needy, Ebonium, are the same words that show up in Psalm 82, where the corrupt Elohim, the corrupt fallen angels, are accused of the exact same crimes. Psalm 82, and I've got that there in the notes so you can take a look at it if you want to, is the condemnation of the fallen angels by God that when they didn't do what they were supposed to do. But those words there, give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute, rescue the weak and the needy and deliver them from the hand of the wicked, are using the same words that Amos is using. So that might be intentional on the part of Amos. There's an additional irony in Amos's words as the cows of Bashan command their husbands, or literally, as it says in the Hebrew, their masters or lords, because the word there is adonim, to bring wine that they may drink. And he may be referring to the fact that these fallen divine beings wanted to be like God, and they wanted to be able to command God, and it didn't work out for them very well. So there's this layer of sarcasm and irony going on here with what he's saying. Also, in Middle Eastern culture, where at this point in time in history would there be any place where the women would tell the men to do anything? It was not possible in that culture. It just didn't happen. Amos will later say in chapter 6, verse 6, that these women drink wine by the bowlful. So excess is in view, but the irony of a fattened cow commanding their masters is a powerful picture that Amos is purposely throwing into our minds. The terms are loaded. Again, Bashan is ground zero for Old Testament demonic activity. So with one statement, Amos has intentionally called out the real housewives of Samaria, the elite, and accused them of being demon worshipers and prostitutes who worship other gods, as well as allowing themselves to be serviced by any bull that comes by. Amos was an interesting guy. Number two, he connected their sin to the sin of the fallen members of the divine council, as well as the watchers. So he's now taking their sin and connecting it to Genesis chapter 6. and saying, you're part of the reason why the flood had to happen. So Amos is not done yet. 3, he condemns the fallen ones and the demons associated with them. So he's condemning all the fallen angels and he's condemning all of the demons as well at the same time. And then 4, this is not at the top of the list, but it's on there. He's calling the women drunk, rebellious wives who control their husbands. It may also be illustrative, I'm trying to figure out how to say this nicely, of their physical size. In other words, if there was an extended fast, they could go through it with no problem. Just trying to be nice. But the commentaries all seem to indicate it could be that too. So again, Amos 4, the first 3 verses, hear this word, you cows of Bashan, who are on the mountain of Samaria, who exploit the poor, who oppress the needy, and say to your husbands, bring now that we may drink. The Lord has sworn by his holiness, behold, days are coming upon you when they will take you away with meat hooks, and the last of you with fish hooks, and you'll go out through holes in the walls, one in front of the other, and you'll be hurled to Harmon, declares the Lord. I put a little more character in reading it this time. Amos points to the future these women are going to have. Now, as we move to verse 2, Amos wants to clearly differentiate between the God these women are serving versus Yahweh, the God he serves, and the one who is going to describe their future, the one who's holy. Holiness, therefore, both makes the Lord what he is, he's God, and what he distinctively is, the God of utter moral perfection. In both these ways and in every way, it's his inmost, utmost, uppermost being. That's who he is. He's holy. He's uniquely distinct from us and what marks him out from anybody else who claims to be God. He's holy. So he swears by his holiness. He actually brings his very nature to bear in this, saying this oath is irrevocable because it's based on God's divine holiness. Now, these women have been involved with their husbands in the exploitation and trafficking of their own brothers and sisters for profit. The judgment being pronounced on them is that they will be treated much worse than they ever considered doing to anyone else. We're given the picture of what it looks like to go to war with the nation of Assyria. Now, Assyria is not mentioned here, but that's what this is all about. The picture continues the satire of the first verse in the comparison to cows for the female elites of Israel. You get this reference to a fish hook. How do you control livestock? You put a hook in their nose, a ring in their nose. There's actually a device that a veterinarian can use to kind of twist like this and control cows or horses, because they'll follow where you got them by the nose. They're not going to go anywhere else. They're not going to be happy about it, but they'll follow you. That's what he's talking about. There's this picture of livestock with the ring, and now he's talking about women with the same kind of adornment. But he's calling it a fish hook. In other words, it's put there, and they didn't want that. Hooks or rings placed in the nose is routine for cattle, and these women are so out of control, they're commanding their husbands, the rich and powerful of the northern kingdom, to keep them drunk and happy. But now we see the Lord referring to the control devices being used on them by the conquering army. We know because of a carving, the victory stele they call it, of Esarhaddon, that the Assyrians routinely put rings or hooks into the noses of those that they wanted to humiliate or control, such as conquered kings and elites. And then they connected them to each other with a string or a rope or a chain. Prior to repenting, the Assyrians did this to King Manasseh. It says in 2 Chronicles 33:11, the Lord brought against them the commanders of the army of the king of Assyria. They seized Manasseh, put hooks in his nose, bound him with bronze chains, and carried him away to Babylon. What a wonderful image. No wonder he repented. That is not hyperbole. I know the first time I read that in the scriptures, I'm going, that's got to be hyperbole. It's got to be something. No, it's not. The more I study it, the more I'm convinced that's the real picture. That's what they did. The reference to holes in the wall, one in front of the other, is also a reference to that. The walls are damaged by the army as they capture the city. The picture is one of the prisoners, all with hooks in their nose, in control, connected one another, and they have to go one after the other out that hole, walking out in single file. It also points to a complete exile of every elite, each of you pointing to a total and complete exile of those after the battle who are still alive. And then completing this satire, the out-of-control cows of Bashan will finally be controlled and hurled to Harmon. Now, that's another word from some commentaries for Hermon, Mount Hermon. The feminine segment of the capital's elite social class is here singled out for accusation and threat. The women, no less than the men, are held accountable for their attitudes and action towards the poor. This is really unusual for Middle Eastern culture. Women here are explicitly placed under the judgment of Yahweh. Their responsibility for the future of Israel is being taken in deadly earnest, and it reflects an attitude that is not commonplace in the Near East. I mean, this is pretty unusual for someone to focus on upper-class women of a specific nation and then pronounce judgment on them. Now, Mount Hermon, which we looked at, is north of Bashan, so these cows of Bashan would end up near Bashan. And in fact, as the Assyrians leave with the captives, they're going to leave some of them as they die on Hermon. They'll be cast onto it. There's another way to look at this, too. Hooks are also a reference, and several commentaries said this, that they are a reference to those tools used to clear dead carcasses of livestock or other animals out of the way, and their bodies are being treated like that after the war. So it could be that as well, but they're spread out on Mount Hermon. And we're going to get more satire now. I mean, as if that's not enough, it gets worse. So we come to verse 4. This is the Lord speaking, and the Lord is using satire. He says, enter Bethel and do wrong. They're going to anyhow. God's just saying this is, he's making a point. In Gilgal, multiply wrongdoing. Bring your sacrifices every morning, your tithes every 3 days. Offer a thanksgiving offering, also from that which is leavened, and proclaim voluntary offerings. Make them known. You so love to do, you sons of Israel, declares the Lord God. That's God using satire. Turning away from the wives of the elite, Amos is now talking to the whole nation of Israel, and on behalf of God, he is using satire to do so. Yahweh is saying, go to Bethel and rebel. That's what you do anyhow. So go ahead. You're going to do it anyhow. But this is a parody of the priest that he's talking to right there in Bethel. The same one Amos is talking to, God's making fun of them. That, hey, people come here to sin, so you might as well help them out. Amos is making friends and building bridges. That's what we see here. Remember, he's a country guy, pretty plain speaking, and God told him to go, so he's doing it. The priest would call the people to come to Bethel and worship. And God's saying, it ain't worship. It's not worship at all. As we saw in Joel and as we saw in Hosea, it is actually prostitution. Hosea really makes a point of that. God sarcastically calls to the people to come to Bethel and sin, and then sin some more. The offerings were a joke. They're not meant to worship Yahweh at all. Worse, the offerings were stolen from other people because they're involved in oppression. Some of the produce that they tithe, they stole. Where did it come from? They stole it from land that they stole. Some of the animals they sacrificed had been fattened on unjustly seized fields, and everything they did, their worship was an offense to God, as it hypocritically offered the fruits of their very rebellion against his covenant. So what they're doing at Bethel and Gilgal was not only sin and rebellion, because none of it's directed towards Yahweh, but it's being done for show. They would make sure there was no doubt who was making the offering. There would be no doubt about the size of the tithe that they're giving. There's probably a plaque on the rear quarter of the golden calf memorializing who gave the money to build that golden calf. I don't know if it did or not, We haven't found any golden calf statues that says Isaac gave this, or anything like that. But you wonder. When he invites them to burn bread with yeast in it, he's again pointing out what they're doing is millions of miles away from what true worship is. The Levitical system is. Yeast in the Levitical system is a type of sin. There's only one feast where you're supposed to use yeast. Pentecost. That's it. That's the only one. Have the practices which Amos is making fun of all ended? Yeah. Did it all end then? No, not really. In churches all over the world, there are those who show up every week because it's politically correct in their circle of friends to do so. I've always had a problem, and you're hearing me personally speak, with campaigns connected with building projects because the larger gifts are usually focused on, and those making the gift are praised, and there's usually a plaque for their gift. I have a friend who said he wanted to give solely for new toilet seats in the bathroom, because as you walked into the restroom, then there would be a plaque letting you know, as you sit in comfort, who provided that toilet seat for you. It may have been, I said, it was given to you by Itzhak the plumber, I don't know. But then you have the naming of buildings, the naming of pews. It was real popular in Great Britain to pay for an entire pew and then have a door on it so you could lock it and keep other people out. It's your pew. Or whatever you want to put a plaque on, that's Bethel and Gilgal, okay? Now, Gilgal, the reason why it's referenced, it was an idol-worshiping site. It had been one since Judges chapter 3, okay? It'd been around for idol worship for a while. But it's in Israel. So now their hypocrisy and sin have been exposed to everybody. Amos didn't leave anybody out. I'm sure that those who are listening to him and the ladies who are listening to them are really happy with Amos right now. And Amos reminds those listening to him about the judgments they've already gotten and have forgotten about. What? They've already had judgments? Yeah. There have been prophets connected to these. There have been 200 years of trying to get them to change their mind. And what has been their response? Crickets. That's been their response. Nothing. So since that's the case, Amos goes through the list one after another to remind them. So what he has done is he has Googled all the recent events to put together a list for us. So it's in verses 6 to 13. But I gave you also cleanness of teeth in your cities and lack of bread in all your places. Yet you've not returned to me, declares the Lord. Furthermore, I withheld the rain from you while there were still 3 months until harvest. And then I would send rain on only one city. But on another city, I wouldn't send rain at all. One part would be rained on while the other part would not be rained on, which would dry up. So the people of 2 or 3 cities would stagger to another city to drink water, but would not be satisfied. Yet you've not returned to me.
You've been listening to the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown at Calvary Chapel, Martin County. In this series, Pastor Ken has been teaching on the book of Amos. The prophet Amos spoke in a time when the king of Israel, Jeroboam II, had created an environment of economic prosperity and spiritual apathy. Amos calls out the leadership of Israel, highlighting the injustices that have been committed against the poor and disadvantaged of their society. Pastor Ken wants you to realize that a society that is rich and prosperous but ignores the needs of those who are unable to help themselves isn't really a healthy society at all. It's one that is on the brink of collapse because it stands against everything God has been teaching His people since the time of Moses. We hope you've been blessed and challenged by today's message. If you'd like to get connected with us, you can check out our website at theunsafebible.com. You can click on the Connect tab and fill out a connection form so that we can get to know you and learn how we can help you grow in your walk with Christ. You can also access past teachings from Pastor Ken by clicking on the Media tab. Calvary Chapel, Martin County is located in Hobe Sound, Florida. You can find our service information on the website as well. We would love to have you join us for worship in person. We're wrapping up today's teaching on the book of Amos, but we would love to have you join us again as we continue to learn more about God's Word here on the UnSafe Bible.